remember Will saying something like, got it. The cloud isn't good because of audio, because of sound stuff, is less good because of sound stuff, but we're beyond things being.
If
That
people
is
want to
not a
listen to it, they're going
concern.
to listen to it with I listen to this podcast with horrible sound, and you know, it's
I
fine.
know.
And it's fine.
I probably don't need to be presented.
Okay.
Visually.
I don't know who.
Okay.
I guess
Could be,
that's
though.
part of the Riverside or whatever it's
We
called.
don't have Riverside anymore.
No, what's the one? Yeah,
We-
somebody
Um,
Zoom, I guess.
Buzzsprout.
Do
Zoom.
you want me to hide non-video participants?
I think that's probably the thing to do. Yeah.
Did that change for you? Because for me it changed, and now I just see myself
No,
and Laura.
not for
Didn't
me,
change
but
for
that's
me.
totally fine.
Okay.
As long as, yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want me to give an overview since I came up
I'm
with this
trying to
idea?
decide if I'm more or less. It did not change for me. And I think I'll stop noticing that there's just a box that says Quinn, Roan, and Jellyfish on my screen eventually, but I don't know if I'll be less. I will be less distracted. Wait, maybe there's a view situation I can change. Because no, I'll just learn to not notice it.
If you go to view,
I might be
you can
more
change
distracted
it,
by his,
or you can
less
click
distracted by your face.
on the 3 dots.
Oh, I can do speaker and then I just get your face real big. Oh, I like that. Let's do that.
Real
Okay, good.
big. Okay.
But
Got it.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
So this month we're focusing on loss and looking at it through acceptance. And for this episode, I suggested to Laura that we look at some kind of larger event or journey in our lives where we, for a while, spent a lot of time on one side of acceptance and then have spent time on the other side of acceptance. And it just to talk about how the feelings, the thoughts that went it, that how this issue presented itself prior to acceptance and after, and as a kind of a roadmap or an example of how acceptance can change other pieces of our life or inform our behavior or our feelings. Laura, do you have anything to add? I explained it differently, I'm sure, when I talked to you. So,
Well, I had some. So I was last night when I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about. Um, I was trying to know whether it was because wait, because we're doing editing, I'm gonna go ahead and say to you, Sasha, right now.
yes, go for it.
Are we supposed to? Is this supposed to be like? I have
Are we s-
questions though.
Yeah,
I
have
didn't know if it
questions.
started
No,
or
that's
if
fine.
it didn't
I
start.
went ahead and started so we could use that,
It felt
but
like it started. And
you're
I
like,
I
oh
wasn't
no, we're
expecting it.
underway. Yes, answer, ask, and I'll answer.
Because is it? I guess it doesn't matter because the thing I picked was this, but it's like looking at a loss that we didn't accept and then we did accept, right? Like it,
Mhm.
because that's so like not just anything, but like some kind of loss related thing that we lived
Mhm.
for a while, choosing not to, like rejecting and rejecting, rejecting. And then there was a shift, and now we're living in a different relationship to this loss,
Yes,
right? Okay.
I like how you describe that. I
Okay.
lost the cap to my lip balm. Sorry.
Are you living in acceptance of it or not in acceptance of that loss?
Acceptance, but I really wanted to do something about it also, so I did. Okay.
Sometimes you're living in both. I accept
You're
it
like,
and
I
I'm not
accept that
going to
it
allow it to
fell,
persist.
but I'm gonna also do something about it because I have some control over, if nothing else in my life, picking this up off the floor. Okay. Okay.
I'm going to take my elbows off though,
Okay.
because it makes everything shake when I laugh.
So, yes. And so for me, I had a couple of things that came immediately to mind. But that might not be everyone, you know? I'd also be curious to hear what, if there was a pivotal moment, you know,
Mhm.
if it happened gradually, if you all of a sudden turned around and were like, wow, I kind of
Mhm.
am on the other side of this, or if it was a conscious, like, a choice or a
Mm-hmm.
some sort of external thing that happened that allowed you to get through. Um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Um,
So maybe what I'm thinking is we'll each share and then we can ask questions and then talk at the end about.
okay. I like it. I think that sounds great. Let's
Okay.
do it.
And I will get, I mean, I don't know how much of this part we'll use, but do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I could go first.
Okay.
I could go on either I could go either time, first or second.
Okay. Maybe you'll go first and
Okay.
can I ask you questions and
Yeah, you
stuff as
totally
needed?
can.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
All right. And all right.
All right.
Huzzah! Here we go.
Huzzah! Have you been watching the show? Oh, now all my screen is Quinn and Jellyfish, he, him. He made some kind of noise and suddenly his name was presented to me.
Okay. May I present?
It doesn't matter. Okay, I was gonna go off on a tangent, but I'm not going to.
Okay. We're really good at staying focused.
Yes,
That's what this project is all about. Focus.
This
Okay.
isn't me. Okay, so interestingly, so I like this idea a lot. The idea of, well, first of all, I like the idea of living with loss, like how it feels. Like, to me, that felt like a real like that description felt accurate, like that I would live with loss, kind of like a roommate or like a hold please, is there a rumbling sound? Is it me? Yeah,
It's you. Are you rumbling?
it's just my vent. It's fine. I thought maybe my computer was like overheating or in some other way articulating its distress, but it's not. Okay. I'm gonna start that over.
Okay, you go for it.
So I was thinking about, I like this idea a lot, and I really like the idea of I like the idea of thinking about many, like a lot of the different things that I like feel and experience as sort of like creatures with whom I have relationships. So I liked the idea a lot of imagining myself living with some loss, like it's like some kind of little like furry, like gray kind of like badger type creature that like has like pads around my house. It's like low to the ground but quite ferocious, with like a spiky tail and nails and kind of a cute face that you could love but that you also could just like completely fear because it's like a tooth-filled face, and like it may be like a bit of a smell, like quite a strong smell, and so even if it's not in the room with you, it's around because you're like ooh,
Yeah.
like ooh, and you like spray stuff in the air, and you could do a lot of stuff to try to cover up the smell, but it's like it's like a sour skunky smell. It's that kind of like, you're like no, and when you leave the house you're like, ooh, is the smell on me? And it is on you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and
I like that a lot. That resonates completely.
and
Mhm.
you're like, oh, it's okay, it's okay, and eventually you don't even know, you're like, that's just how I smell. I smell like that. And you do, it's like, because you're stewed in that smell. And then there's some change that lets you be like live differently with the like, you know like the badger,
Mm.
the lost badger.
Mhm.
And it doesn't change anything necessarily about the lost badger, but it just your physically, but your changed relationship maybe changes everything. So it felt interesting and right to me, to think about it that way.
Mm.
um so the thing I thought about talking about, but I couldn't think of any particular loss. Like, then I was trying to think about a loss that was specific, like,
Mm.
and I couldn't come up with anything. So the thing that felt most like closest was was this. So, when I was little, I really didn't like the idea of separation from my mother in particular, and I was very interested in not having abandonment. I was very interested in her not abandoning me, and she was not going to abandon me. And there wasn't any, so there was never anything in particular to fight. Like, it's not like she was, you know, um, like out drinking at bars, or like she was present in every moment in every way. And yet I still was afraid of it. And so that made it very uncomfortable, because I didn't have anything to embody that loss. Like, I didn't have any particular thing to not accept, like I did not accept the idea that she might someday leave. But I didn't have anything to fight against, like, to
Right.
specific thing to push away. So it just sort of felt like monsters, like the way that monsters live
Yeah.
in the way that monsters live in a house.
Oh, yes, of course.
And they're really hard to fight. And like when I was in elementary school, so maybe when I was in second grade, and interestingly, and this is a thing that I noticed the last time when we were talking about the story, in the time episode, when we were talking about how stories change over time.
Yes.
I think a lot of my stories changed when my father visited when I was 7. And I hadn't pinned things to that event until just like recently. But and a lot of things changed around that time. My mom started working, not cleaning houses, so she was away for longer, and I had to have babysitters, and we moved into a house where we didn't know anybody. Like, before, we'd been living in a house with this family that we'd lived with since I was born, and whom I considered my family, and I like crawled up and down the stairs and had meals with them, and there was like like 2 adults and 3 adults and 3 kids, and there were kids across the street. Like, there was people down the road. Like, there was this big family that I lived in that was both in my house and in my neighborhood. And we moved out of that into an apartment that was just me and my mother. And there was none of those people were around. And then she went to work, and then my father came to visit. And then to top it all off, I accidentally watched the movie Poltergeist by myself. My mother was cleaning someone's house, and they had like a television in the attic, and I was by myself watching this giant, like, big screen. It was like a projection screen, and Poltergeist, I don't know how it happened, but it was like terrible. So terrible, Sasha. It was a very wrong.
Sounds like a perfect storm of things, with Poltergeist just capping it off. Just
really
the final
bad.
blow.
It was really bad. So then I was just like lived in horrible, deep, like profound fear of trees in my closet. And because again, I had nothing to attach I didn't know what to fight. And so it was just, I didn't know. Poltergeist was in some ways helpful, because it was like, it's your closet.
Be afraid of your closet. Don't look under your bed. And why have that clown sitting there staring at you when you're going to sleep? That's a bad idea. Yeah, exactly. You had like then actual tangible things to direct that like huge wave of fear. And yeah, okay, I see that.
Yeah. And then, I've worked on that fear in a variety of ways. And like, I'm not afraid of closets. Like, from that time, I think that was its peak, when I was like, there's a thing that is going to cause abandonment and loss, and I don't know what it is. And I'm just going to be afraid of everything. I mean, not everything, not like actual things, not like taking a bus by myself or, but anything that could be haunted, I'll be afraid of. And like the dark and nighttime and sleeping. Just too bad.
So just those things, So I was fine. It was fine.
I was tired, but I was okay on the bus.
The bus, no problem. I like that the bus has become like there's like the dark nighttime sleeping versus the bus. Like the bus is
Versus the
good.
bus.
So we all have trade-offs. We all
It's
have
like
things. But
strangers,
buses were great.
routes that may drop you off in like horrible, scary parts of the city. That's no problem. But the closet, watch out for the closet. But like now I'm 46. So I'm no longer scared of the closet. So I've been working on it, but recently I met this woman, Jenny, whom you've also met, who has a Waparo Island farm, and she does limpias. And so you like lay on a table and you talk to her about stuff, and then she asks you to go out into the garden, like the witch garden, and you like ask the plants if they have anything that they'd like to, like if they would be willing to help. And you like listen, and some of them say yes, and then if they say yes, you ask if you can like take some of their body for the thing, and you like cut pieces of them off, and you go in and she hits you with it and like scrubs you with the plants and blows smoke in your ears and then drums all around your body. And I was having my first Olympia, and I had this thing where I like imagined like in my mind, I imagined this like dark, like gurgling, this like dark gurgling, like I don't know, it was like a river, like a geyser, like a little like whatever. It was like liquid, surely. And I was just sort of watching it for a while, like wondering what it was. It was inside of my body. Like I was imagining it inside of my body. It went like from my like, it was like in my belly up to my face. And then suddenly I was like, oh, that's the abandoner. Like, my brain was like a little bit
Right.
squishy because of the drumming and
Sure.
your
Yeah.
smoke.
But did it feel like you were like, this is it?
I
Like
was
this
like,
is the thing that I've been
that's
like,
the abandoner. And I was like, fuck, it's inside of me. Like, oh no, and the sentence in my brain was, I'm the great abandoner. Like, oh no, I'm the great abandoner. And I didn't like that idea, but I was like,
that's just so comforting. Wow. Yeah.
And I was startled, and I like, I'm like half asleep or whatever. This is like this strange little dream state. And I like looked over, and in the dark corner of the room, there was this woman, and she was like shelling beans. She was like sitting on the ground. And I was like, to her, I was like, I'm the great abandoner, like very upset, And she like looked up at me, and she was just like, yeah, like obviously, like what now? Like she was just like, move on. Like she was like, and now what?
Right.
Like she was so matter of fact about it. She was like, yes, of course you are. Who isn't? Could you please help with these beans? And it was like a pivotal. Like I was like, oh.
Yeah. And I'll help with the beans.
Yeah, like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, like, that's really different. If I just am like, right, I'm not gonna hold things together. I'm gonna like abandon people and be abandoned. Like, I don't know why it was so helpful in that moment, but in that moment, having this woman just be like just look at me like, oh my God, are you even kidding? Like,
of course you are.
Come on. Not exactly.
It strikes me as like when you live in fear of a thing, like, oh no, it's going to happen. I was reading in some book, and I may have mentioned it here before, where one of the characters was committing this like Ponzi scheme and was afraid of getting caught. And even though he had a lot of wealth and a lot of success, his, first part of his life was marked with panic and fear, because he was like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then the latter half of his life was spent in jail, feeling quite calm, because the worst thing that he had built it up as the worst thing happened. And then you find that there's life after the worst thing. it's not like the life you wanted, but actually weirdly it sets you free.
Mhm.
Like it's like, oh yeah, I did do terrible things and I knew it and I'm paying for it and I'm going to go out in the field now and watch the birds, which is something I never would have done before because I was so worried about getting caught.
Mhm.
Um, but it makes me think a little bit of this idea of like,
Mm.
okay, yeah, you
Mhm.
are it and it's going to happen to you again.
And I'm
And
gonna
it's
do
just
it to
part of
other
it.
people,
You're
and
going
I
to do it.
can't
You're going to
make it
hurt
go away
people.
because it's inside of me. Yeah.
Mm, that's good, Laura.
Yeah, it was good. It was way
Mhm.
better than having someone be like, "No, you're not." You know,
Mhm.
like, "No, no, it's not true, you're not." Or like, "No, it's okay, there's a way to make it better. Like, we can
Mhm.
get rid of it just like this." Like, to just have someone be like, "Yeah, you are."
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, I liked it.
I had a therapist. It makes me think when I lived in Seattle, I've had many therapists over the years, and I feel like they each have helped me with at least one key piece looking back, you know? But this one, it was very irritating at times. She would say, "So what?"
Mm. Mhm.
But the bigger lesson of like, she was basically saying, okay, this thing might happen. Like, actually, I'm not going to
Mhm.
say it's not going to. Could be really bad. And so what? And in a way, like, and let's work on these beans.
Mhm.
Like, why is this consuming you right now? And I was like, it was actually very helpful. Like the way she did it every time, I was like, I'll tell you so what. I'll tell you why. But I did. It kind of worked its way through me, where I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think I build all these things up, like, but if this doesn't happen, then that won't
Yeah.
happen, and then
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and then you're
Yeah.
like, house of
Yeah.
cards. You're like, don't touch the house of cards.
Yeah.
You don't
I
understand. I'm like,
know. What a
okay.
like, stop it. And I do, there's like this, I feel like there's this way that it makes that having a thing like that that's so precious, like treating it so
Mm.
preciously, in some ways makes me less available and engaged and like, the thing
Oh.
I wanted was connection and deep connection
Mhm.
and but it's like if you have a primary connection to your fear, it keeps you from having
Hmm.
or when I had a primary connection to my fear,
Yeah.
it really got in the way of my having a the kind of connections that I thought were, a remedy to my fear. It's
Hmm.
like I was so focused on this like lost monster that I couldn't
Mhm.
listen to what you were saying, like got in the
Yeah.
way of my actually hearing you because I was like glancing over and glancing over and glancing over.
Right. That's powerful. Yeah, that is. Okay. Shall I share mine? Because I feel like afterwards I would love to talk about them together.
Yeah.
Um, so I had a couple things come to mind immediately when I thought of an example. And my one of them is about my 16-year-old. And I asked him if it was okay if I shared this. And he looked at me like, yeah, fine. So I got his permission. Um, okay. So for years, so I think with new projects, with babies, with new life, with a new adventure, with a new house, like with new things, there's like expectations. Like you're like, and it's really hard to be present with them without them. You
Mhm.
just see like, oh, like I'm buying this house or I'm going to move to this new city and I see myself there doing it like this, at
Mhm.
least in some way, because it
Mhm.
helps get you there. It helps you
Mhm.
through the hard days. And with a baby, it's similar where it's like, oh, and when he's a grown up, we'll do this. And, or when he's like a little older, I'll take him here or I'll show him this movie, my favorite movie. And it's like marked by all these things. It's almost like they're filed away. And then when your kid gets to be that age and they're not that, it's like, no, wait, I already come back over here. We're supposed to now do this.
Mhm.
And I spent, I don't even know, like a really long time, like slowly feeling frustrated and worried with my lost badger. Like I felt like the lost badger was like creeping, getting bigger and stronger over the years. Like it's like, wait, the way I expected your adolescence to be looked a lot different.
Mm. Mm.
Um and I was like fighting like with the lost badger in a way of like, no, you just need to be less badgery.
Mhm.
You need to be less smelly, less
Mhm.
toothy,
Mhm.
and let's just put you in like some nice clothes and like you'll be fine. So just I'm going to control
Suits for
you.
the badger. Suits for the badger.
And then you will, it'll be okay. So I
Mhm.
just was like fighting with it and fighting with it. And just wrestling with the badger. And meanwhile, my kid is like, doesn't think I like him
Mm.
and doesn't think I care about how he feels on the inside, just wants him to meet the, like,
Mhm.
oh, this is what I'm supposed to do in seventh grade. This is what eighth grade's supposed to look like. This is what ninth grade. This is what being a 13-year-old or teenager is supposed to look like. And I really don't do a lot of supposed tos and shoulds, like in general. But even so,
Yeah.
I had them.
Yeah.
I had them. I had them
Yeah.
even in a loosey goosey, like free spirit way. I had them. So I really clung to it. And in the process, I hurt him and I
Yeah.
hurt us. And I did it with love. And I think that's
Mhm.
what's so hard is I really wanted, but the way I saw through this, the way I saw
Mhm.
through was to do what I had expected because my expectation, my plan ends up in a good place. It's like I wrote this book already. And
Mhm.
if you just follow the script,
Mhm.
you'll come out the other side and be okay.
Mhm.
I don't know what this is.
Mhm.
This is so I wrestled with what was really showing up, like trying to get him to come, like, nope, this is the story. Come
Yeah.
on. And I
Yeah.
adjusted it and accounted for his love of music and his like being more quiet and
Mhm.
introspective and super bright and all these things. Like I was like, okay, we can tweak the story. It's like a
Mhm.
choose your own adventure novel. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
now we're jumping to page 63. Okay, we'll go this way. But
Yeah.
that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And there was a period where I just stopped. And I have to credit his therapist with helping me get there. When we moved to the Chicago area 3 years ago, she was like, I would encourage you to let him feel the weight of his own choices and just learn from them. And after angrily calling her a delusional idiot, which I apologize for after,
You
um,
called her that too out loud to her.
to her, to her and my husband. It's like, y'all are both delusional idiots if you think this is going to work. Yeah. I never get more angry than when I'm talking about my kids. And then I'm like, I mean, I'm my own badger. Like, I feel like that's when I'm like, oh, yeah, I will tell you. Oh my gosh. I was like, no, this is a bad plan. I like fought it. I fought it big time. And I cried. I was so
Mm.
sad. Like, I was like
Mm.
grieving
Oh yeah.
this, like,
Each of the
oh,
iterations.
every moment, everything I would see when I'd see like a happy group of teenagers
Oh
walk down the
yeah.
street, I would internally like, it would like split me open and I would like, and meanwhile, my kid is struggling with anxiety,
Mhm.
OCD, depression, um, ADHD. He's super complicated,
Mhm.
so bright, so
Mhm.
funny,
So
so
funny.
interesting, so like, there's so much to him, but all I could see were the ways he wasn't able to show up
Yeah.
in that old before acceptance. After acceptance, it's not like I have no hopes exactly, but they're really different.
Yeah.
They're more less hopes about specifics. Like I don't really, it's very much about um our connection and
Yeah.
being present and like, and now I find that I'm like enjoying the connection and seeing the good parts of this lost badger, and that this lost badger is actually playful
Mhm.
and silly and adds character and
Mhm.
has made me grow a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm like, my eyes were closed. It's like I did have blinders on. I was like, this is the way forward. I can't look over there. And meanwhile, like somehow the blinders came off and I'm like, oh, and yeah, you're not able to show up for these things that I'm fixated on for whatever reason. But look at what you are. Look at all that
Mhm.
you are. And just be with him in that and let him figure it out. And
Yeah.
it's been one of the hardest things I've done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
It is I like I do think it's interesting to think about all the parallel relationships. It's like you had a relationship with Luca, but then and you had a relationship with actual Luca, but then you were also having every single minute you were with Luca relationships with um potential Luca.
Oh yeah.
Like, like, oh, maybe you'll be this kind of thing, or maybe you'll be that kind of thing, or maybe and relationships with potential Sasha. Like,
Yeah.
and then I will behave like this, and I'll be this, the parent of this, and
Yeah.
that'll be this life for me.
Absolutely. And each time there was a period of like where it felt like doors closing and it
Mm-hmm.
felt like saying goodbye to
Mm-hmm.
that future possibility.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, 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 no. These are all slamming really fast.
Right.
Hold on, hold on. And then I realized that I was engaging with him in a way that was not helpful to the current present day kid
Mm-hmm.
that he was. It was about
Uh,
something that
yeah.
was constructed in my head despite my best intentions.
Yeah. And like maybe not even getting to see the person, like,
Oh, yeah.
and that is scary. Like, I do think that there's something really scary about actually seeing people how
Yeah.
they are. I think and getting up to date on loss, because it sounds like when you were talking, like you had to catch up on a ton of loss. You had to, like,
Mhm.
you weren't like mourning things in real time, because I don't know if it's possible for me at any rate not to construct hypotheticals, like
Mhm.
I think that's just one of the features of a human brain, and maybe like with practice, and some human brains less than other human brains, but
Mhm.
my human brain definitely is like, oh, well,
Mm.
I could see we could do this, and this, and this, and
Yeah.
there's cool things about that it's like a good way to have like a fun day, because I can be
Right.
like, oh, I can imagine us doing this, or I can imagine us doing this, or
Yeah.
but the part where like you're like, oh, but we're not doing that,
Right.
like let go and mourn, and then like embrace and rejoice.
Yes. And for a while, I couldn't do both at once.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I was really mourning, and and now there's still that comes up now and again, like where it hits me and I'm like, "Ooh, ah," oh, yeah, that was when I was holding on to.
Uh-huh.
And, it's subtle.
Yeah.
And it's not like I can just like check boxes and like, I'm going to today mourn these five and then I'll mourn that. They come up when they come up. But I'm also able to be present and rejoice with what is here,
Yeah.
which means sometimes it's also, it's a teenager. So it's what is here is also teenagery, which is all things.
Yeah.
Um, but that feels like, oh yeah, that's what's really here. That well, you mentioned something which made me think, oh yeah, let me share, because you said it's like you're so busy looking over your like looking
Uh-huh.
for it that you can't see what's in front of you and you can't hear. And I see how I missed
Uh-huh.
some things. And now I'm thinking, like, I'm trying to be mindful of how that might be affecting me in other areas.
Mhm.
Like how, like, let's see how much of this expectation is like worming its way in
Mhm.
to other relationships and other things.
Mhm.
And I think it's leaving me very open,
Mhm.
which feels really good, and really, we'll see, like,
Mhm.
stay tuned. Um, uh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like there's this, I don't know, to me it feels like there's this um like idea in or I had this idea that I could have like one big door that
Mhm.
I could open or close, And
Mm.
but the trouble is if you close the big door, like lots and lots of things can't come through, and then the pressure on the door is so hard that your
Mhm.
walls just crumble, and then
Mhm.
and then you don't know what to defend and how to cope,
Yeah.
and it feels like there's a change that's happened for me gradually and with some moments of big, um, like big some in some not gradual moments, and then also many gradual moments where I've realized like, oh, it would be better and more true if it was less like one big door and many, many, many valves. Like, you know how inside your body you've got like gazillion valves that are just like flick, flick,
Mhm.
flick, 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 flick,
Yeah.
flick, flick, like
Right.
opening and closing. And
Right.
some of them like open and close on purpose, and some
Mhm.
open and close because of pressure.
Mhm.
Um, and that model is so it's like um you have to just like you're not in charge of it. Like I'm not like opening and closing my heart valves or like
No,
opening closing like the
that would
like
be exhausting.
yeah.
Imagine that's all I could do all day. I was like, okay, heart, open, close, lungs, time to breathe. Like,
Like
thank goodness things are automated,
like
but
all the little like
yes.
clicky things that have to click. Um and I think that that is maybe the truth for me with loss. Like
Hmm.
the valves are not under my control, and when I try to have like a mega valve that decides that like um offers my many other valves, like I'm like, oh, this will be good because I'll just like do one big sort. um
Mhm. Yeah,
it just doesn't, it's just not effective.
it
It's like
doesn't.
better to just figure out how to like let the actual system be strong.
Mhm. And I think the more you practice, like in one way, the more, like for me, it's like I notice, oh, I'm doing this in this other way. I see
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm going to try this route. I get,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me think, and I'm going to speak to something that I know just a little bit about, so it's probably not right. But like, as someone with epilepsy, I've thought a lot about like brain, like the synapses and like how things fire. Um, and I feel it and I know when it's feeling when
Mm-hmm.
things are not firing in a
Mm-hmm.
way that they usually do. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like for Luca, like, and for these expectations, sometimes I was unknowingly going through like, okay, I'm connecting with my kid. First, I
Mm-hmm.
have expectations, and then here's my kid, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I didn't even realize, but it's like it's a path that gets worn.
Mm-hmm.
And then before long, you're like, my expectation is, oh, he's going to be hungry after nap. Or just it just starts very simply, just so you can plan your life or
Mm-hmm.
your day or know what's happening next. It can't always be like, and who are you now? Like, oh, I have no idea, but there is a certain like, let's move past, like, I don't need to have, like
Mhm,
I feel like now I'm just like me, kid. And then I'm like, sometimes like, oh, that's aggravating.
mhm,
It's not like it's all great, but it is like,
yeah,
I'm like, without expectations, so much more can grow and you can see so much more. And that they are
mhm,
working on. who they are, not just what I'm like, okay, I'm going to curate what you're showing me and make it into
Mhm.
the thing that I had in mind.
Yeah. I know,
Um,
it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable and so, in my experience, so much more interesting, and also in some ways so much more and so much easier, much more
mm,
easeful. Like, there's so much more for me.
mm,
It's like the shift in, um, routine is
mm,
super uncomfortable, and also uncomfortable because, there's not a ton of or in my experience, a ton of peer support for it. It's,
no.
like, not a super easy thing
Yes.
to see,
Well,
like, look around and maybe more in some
absolutely.
communities. I feel like I actually have a lot of people who I have close to me that I that are now at least that I do have peer support
That's
for
good.
it, and it feels awesome to have peer like
It really does. I think,
mhm,
because even though if you do the internal work
mhm,
and if you have to share what's going on, it can feel shameful. It can
mhm,
like dig out those
mhm,
expectations. And again, you can think, oh, like
mhm,
for example, like, you know, Luca dropped out of high school
mhm,
this year. He is basically like unschooling, deschooling. He's figuring out what's next. He has like, we're giving him the space
mhm,
to like come to his why on his own, and then we'll
mhm,
help him with the how if he needs it. And, as he gets older, we'll have certain expectations about just being in our home,
mhm,
and contributing um, more or whatnot. But like, I'm just not even, we're not there right now. We're right now,
mhm.
he's doing this. This is the work he's doing. But there are times when,
Yeah.
like, I was taking a drive with him and he said something really funny and I just laughed like really hard. And he's like, what? And I'm like, it was just really funny. And I realized what's different now and what he might be picking up on is like, I didn't have an agenda for the
Mhm.
drive. I wasn't like, I'm going to take you and we're going to talk. I'm going to
And you're
be
gonna
very,
realize that
I'm going to have this quality time. And by the
mhm.
end, you'll be like, oh, I see that I should enroll in this program. And I'm like,
Right.
I really was just being with him, and then I could see what came, and I feel like I don't know what came of that. It was just like a lovely moment of realization
Yeah,
that I can just be with him,
yeah.
and I don't know, and that's
And
it. That's it.
that's it, and it's nice to be able to tell that story to people who aren't, because I think we all have fear badgers and we all have relationships to them.
Yeah.
And if I have a bunch of fear badgers that I have dressed up in suits, like gnawing at their, like
Mhm.
like desperately gnawing at their like little tie up Oxford shoes, and I'm like into it. I'm like, no, 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 I've got it. Mine are good.
Yeah.
If you're like, my fear badger runs naked through the fields, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be like absolutely not. Like, I think that sometimes and I understand that, it's like you don't have to have yours run naked through the fields. Like, you can have yours in like little like velvet, like I'm imagining them in like little velvet cutout, like like just like sliding in.
Yeah.
But like that is
But, like, presentable.
but presentable, and I feel like it's much scarier for me if I'm like mine is naked and if you're afraid of mine, like I'm already afraid of mine. So if I come to you and I tell you what it's my guy's doing, and even if it's like this feels good to me, if you respond by being like that is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's much harder for me to be comfortable with it, you know?
Yeah.
And so while I like diversity and I think it's nice to have people doing all kinds of different things with their
Mhm.
badgers, I also like having some people who are like, mine too. Like,
Yes. Oh,
mine swims and it's taken over, the lake behind the house. And now we have special wading shoes. Like, we find if we let it,
I know.
sometimes
It's
it
so
brushes up
true.
against our thighs in a way that's actually quite pleasant.
Well,
Also,
right, right, exactly.
we're afraid,
Um,
you know?
Instead of like, I need to, you know, control the badger out of this. Like I need to like make it less scary, less disturbing to others.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and instead, but it is hard when
It,
you feel like the
no one else
judgment
is
or the
doing that.
fear or like people not wanting to be around.
Yeah,
It,
you and your badgers. And like some people can do it. And if your badgers are gonna live the rest of their lives in like nice suits sitting at on a
yeah,
window seat, like that's fantastic. Like I genuinely think that that's fine and fantastic.
I
It's
think
just
there's a
that
lot of
mine will
ways to do it.
not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think given that, this is not like this is the best way to do it. This
Yeah.
is just our experience. And I'm glad I
Yeah.
can talk to you about my
Yeah. It's
wild
nice.
badger.
My wild badger.
My wild
And
badger.
it's nice. And that I think that that's a like it's easier to accept things. I'm a social animal. It's like much easier to accept the scary things about me if I have people around who look a little bit like a little bit like me and aren't dead, you know?
It's like, oh, shoot. When this happens, it's over. No, I know exactly. And this is a lot about like grief support too.
Yeah.
I feel like in general, um, whether your grief is, from a death or some sort of other loss, it's hard to talk about. Like it can feel like, oh, shoot, now
Mm-hmm.
I dropped a bomb in this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm like not only not getting support that I need, which is like, yeah, it is hard. Come work on the beans with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, that is bad. That is so bad. That is
You
so
should
bad that
not.
I'm leaving and not being with you, or I'm gonna say things because I don't know what to
Mm-hmm.
say. And it's like, I get it. I've been on the other side of that where I didn't know what to say also. It's just we just as a culture are not good at this. Like we don't
Yeah.
we don't really know how to deal with that. But it feels so hard when you're received that way, when you're like,
Mm-hmm.
and here, and everyone freaks out and they're like,
Yeah.
you've been living with that? Oh my God.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
shit. Like,
This was
can I
only a
give you
part
some
of it
coupons
too.
to the like badger suit store? I won't go with you because your
I can't
guys
be
are.
a
Oh, you
lot.
could here. You take them to the store, see if they've got anything that'll fit, and let me know how it goes. And
Yeah.
maybe we can make a plan for later
Like much
if it goes
later.
well.
Yes.
Yeah. I know it's interesting. It's and that's what I hope that we like when we were talking about our hopes for the project
Mhm.
and how I don't and like my feeling is that like the truth about me is that I am like full of messy, muddy, slimy, drooly, sharp and pointy, smelly badgers. And I like the idea of cultivating and like environments that they can live in and actually be really helpful. Like badgers
Mhm.
do stuff, right? Like they like eat stuff that needs to not be around. Probably their poo is useful. Like I don't know what they do in the
Mhm.
ecosystem, but I know they do something in the ecosystem,
Mhm.
like really vitally
And they're really
important.
tough.
And they're really tough. And I would like, for me personally, I would like to have an ecosystem that like in which they thrive and which thrives with them in it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a muddy, crazy place. Like that's
Mhm.
going to be a muddy, crazy place. Um, so that's what I have to offer, like other
Mhm.
people, like,
Yeah.
and I love that there's also places that are pretty and
Mhm.
not not badger filled. Like I don't feel like there needs to just be that,
All
like
badger all the time.
I like very much. And like I would love to go spend the afternoon in your town center where your badger's on like a pretty collar and it has like a nice leash and you're like you're carrying a parasol maybe and
You're
like
like getting tea and
you're getting
your
tea and
badger's
wearing
like,
linen.
I love my daily walks.
Its
Yes.
toenails have like little tips that you've come somehow put on them that are like sparkly and it goes like click, 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 click. I'm into that. Like I want to come, like
Yeah.
please invite me. I'll come. And maybe
Yeah.
if I'm really like at some point when my badgers and I like love each other so much, they'll even come. I'll be like, you guys, can we do this for the afternoon? And they'll be like, yes. Yes, we can. As long as you like free us, once
Yes.
it's over. So right. So like I want all of it. I want all of it. And I want the wild badger lands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. So I'm working on creating my quote unquote wild badger lands within me, within my family, within my community. And it's interesting work and it's hard to talk about, but I like how much badgers have become a part of this conversation. So
Me too. And
I
my
would,
heart.
and your heart. I would love if anyone feels so moved to share their lost badger
Yeah.
with us via writing or drawing or
Yeah.
sending us like a audio recording,
Or like a flip book,
a
illustrated
flip book,
flip book.
painting, like however.
T-shirts. I would like
just-
t-shirts.
Yeah, you love t-shirt. You love a
I
good
do love
t-shirt.
t-shirts.
Yeah,
I
you
would like
always
to
are like
only
t-shirts.
dress. I want to have all my clothes just be people's hand-drawn,
Badgers.
like
Like they're lost
fear
badgers.
badgers.
Oh my
Various,
gosh. Yeah,
including. That's
I
it.
love it.
That's all I wear.
Uh,
Special. Special kind of
yeah.
style.
Special. Definitely special. Oh, well, Laura, this was wonderful.
This
Thank
was
you
wonderful.
for sharing your lost badger with me.
Yeah, thank you for liking my lost badger and being willing to
Welcome.
like throw at rats and I don't know.
And then
Maybe
run
don't
away
throw-
quickly. Yes.
watch from a safe place.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. The end.
The end. All right. Good. That was all right. We ended around when?
Ronan jellyfish.
All right.
Let me just make sure I know what time my client's coming. Oh, 10:15.
What time is it now for you?
9:50.
9:50.
Okay. All right. So we can wrap up in a minute. Any thoughts from our audience of one or at Laura afterwards? I'm not sure who can do I can probably squeeze in doing the editing for We-Edit because I'd like to get it soon.
I would like to get
But,
it soon also.
Sorry, is that the listening back through it and making any notes on edits?
Yeah.
On time stamp? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so I don't know if either of you have time and want to do that. They do
I
well with like ums and pauses, so we don't have to talk about that. But when you were like, I'm sorry, have we started? Can we stop? Like we can get that. But part of that might be useful. I don't know. I'd have to re-listen.
and so basically is what they want, like a timestamp that says like
Here, I'm
from
going to stop recording here. Okay.